This video will be put together a little differently compared to my other devlog breakdown. Seeing that I'm behind my effort to cover these logs, I'll be doing Dev Diaries 2 and 3 in one video. So, let's get into it. Starting with Dev Diary 2 platforms, we are introduced to Craig McLeod, an executive producer, and get a quick recap over the history of Payday 2 on consoles, and how it's been more or less left out to dry. Console heisters being left without updates at the hands of the Diesel engine and Overkill's neglect respectfully. Craig and Almir go on to promise not to have a repeat of Payday 2 on consoles with Payday 3, and are only releasing it on the latest generation of consoles. Craig goes on to talk about Starbreeze's vision for a united Payday community by utilizing Starbreeze Nebula. This is done in order to implement cross-progression and unite players across all platforms who, in his own words, are fans of the same game. Almir talks about how some people may be apprehensive to signing up to new things, which I was one of those people when they first introduced this with Payday 2. However, I eventually signed up when I found out they gave a classic all-black suit when you linked your account. The video wraps up with a quick little thank you from Almir and Craig on behalf of Starbreeze and Overkill for sticking with Payday as a franchise through the years, through thick and thin. And that finishes Dev Diary 2 for Payday 3. In Developer Diary 3 Combat, we are introduced to Mio and Jimmy, senior game designers for Starbreeze. Mio starts off by highlighting a little more of the thoughts behind the design process of how difficulties are treated in Payday 3 compared to Payday 2. Payday 3 is launching with 4 difficulties: Normal, Hard, Very Hard, and Overkill. Normal is for fresh-faced green players, Hard is for those who are getting a grip with the game, Very Hard is intended to be the standard level for veterans and grinding, and Overkill is meant to grind you into a fine red paste. Mio goes on to announce that enemies will no longer be segregated by difficulty as they were before in Payday 2. This was done in part to make the jump between difficulties easier for players. Making all enemies' health the same on all difficulties was done to achieve this effect also. Jimmy then talks about the additions to the movement system, such as mantling and sliding. He then goes on to talk about the weight system and how armor affects it, and other things, which we can assume are bags. We then are graced by the face of the tragedy of the benevolent bank heist himself, Martin Verne, the lead gameplay programmer. Martin explains the changes made to the armor system, armor now operating based off of shards that can be shot yet regenerate like previous games. However, if a segment is broken, it cannot be regained without outside influence, such as the reworked armor bag that actually contains armor in the form of plates. Health and medic bags work differently in this game compared to the first two. As we know from the YouTubers who went out to play it, medic bags no longer heal a player back to 100% health, as we can see in this clip here. Martin goes on to say that health is not regenerating at all. However, there are plenty of ways to recover lost health. Mio then comes back to tell us that stacking armor is not the go-to strategy in Payday 3, and that certain specials will do immediate damage to a player's health bar and ignore armor altogether. I'll get back to which enemies can do this later. Mio goes on to break down how enemies are categorized in Payday 3, SWAT and Heavy SWAT being common enemies, uncommon enemies being the Sniper and Shield, and the specials of the Bulldozer, Nader, Taser, and Cloaker respectively. Martin then returns to reveal that the Bulldozer is returning to a place of respect and fear in Payday 3, claiming that we as heisters have lost respect for him, which is true. The passage of time has not been kind to the dear Dozer as it has for other specials. The Dozer will be upgraded in Payday 3 with a plethora of new abilities, such as the Bull Rush that we saw in the end of the reveal trailer, and a kick that stuns players. Mio then explains that for those who truly have a special dark pit of hate in their hearts for the Dozer, or any special enemy, they as a player can create a build around specifically killing that special at the cost of being weaker in all other combat scenarios. Jimmy then chimes in that teamwork and coordination can circumnavigate the shortfalls of a build that is centered around Dozer deletion, and the best way to make it through a heist is together. Getting back to the enemies that can damage specifically health, the Sniper is no longer alone in this regard. We are given a proper introduction to the Nader, a special that is centered around grenades that impede the progress of heisters. The Nader can throw out flashbangs, possibly frags, and the gas grenade. Most likely a form of tear gas, the grenade creates a cloud that when walkthrough prevents players from sprinting and damages health directly, with a weak point on his chest that when detonated creates a cloud of gas. Now, let's get to the electrified elephant in the room, the Taser, or as he is known now, the Zapper. I understand why the name had to be changed. The name Taser is trademarked, but there's just something that doesn't sit right with me about the name Zapper. It doesn't have the same bite or ring that Taser has. So for the rest of this video, I'm just gonna call him the Taser. Anyways, the Taser stun has changed, now operating in stages where the first stage works just as it has in previous games, being locked in place, uncontrollably firing your weapon, while the second stage is a full stun that you can't shoot out of. We see a little bit of this full stun in the reveal trailer, along with the new Taser weak point of a pouch of Taser mines that he can set up around the map. Overall, I really like the changes they made to the Taser. Mostly. They feel like a great evolution of his mechanics, and the stun system works well with the addition of visible cables coming from the Taser, making it easier to see exactly where he is and retaliate. The Cloaker is revealed next, and oh boy, is he a pain in this one. The Cloaker, along with his returned movement mechanics from Payday the Heist, also now has a bottle of acid that he can pour on any unguarded deployables and melt them, because he's that toxic of a person. Martin then comes in to explain a change to the shield, or rather, how SWAT will now work around and group up with the shield, much like in the concept art. Jimmy then reveals that weapons in Payday 3 will have distinct spray patterns that can be learned along with weapon attachments, now being tied to a weapon's level. One thing they had previously tested in Payday 2, and now has taken root in Payday 3, is preset weapons. Two of them being the American flag deco on the shotgun, and the graffiti style piece on the AK. Jimmy then says that leveling will not be tied to which preset you have on a weapon, meaning that playing with a preset will still level up the base weapon. We then move on to overkill weapons, and get a better look at the 50 cal sniper we saw in the trailer, and get the info that overkill weapon progress can be gained through completing objectives in a heist, and not just killing. Jimmy then speaks about the decision to go back to the old bar system rather than definitive stats like Payday 2, claiming that it was a move focused on letting players choose to play with weapons they prefer, rather than what's statistically better. Personally, I don't know how I feel about this. I played the launch version of Payday 2, and the bars really weren't helpful in that regard, but seeing how people have talked about the game, and from the clips we've seen, I think it will be mostly alright. We get a little bit of info about ECMs and the placeable camera, despite the dev diary being about combat. There's no mention of if ECM feedback is returning, but we do see that other stealth devices have uses in Loud, such as the camera and the stun bomb. The devs wrap up by saying that how excited they are about the open-ended approach that players can have for heists, and what loadouts and skills they make, along with Mio chiming in with the hopes of seeing players rage at the Cloaker as the video ends. As a quick side note, two of the devs, Jimmy and Martin, are seen wearing in this video Houston shirts and hoodies, despite that Houston is not one of the heisters we have seen so far. Does this mean Houston will be one of the 2 extra crew members returning at launch? I don't know. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a comment. Feel free to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications about new videos. The next video will be about the lost tapes. That's all I got. I'm gonna go now. See you guys.